Hi, I'm Patrick Carter, Training Manager for IC Realtime. Welcome to the IC Realtime video series. Today we're going to talk about networking. Once you have that wonderful recorder, it sure is handy to be able to view it remotely. We're going to talk about some of the network utilities that are built into our recorders. We're going to talk about some of the functionality that you have, certainly how to get it online, some of the resources you have available for getting your router configured, and again, remote access. So let's go ahead and start with the network settings themselves. At the head unit, at the recorder, I'm going to go ahead and just right-click on the screen. I'm going to go into the main menu. Of course, if I need to log in, I can certainly log in. And I'm going to go to networking. The very first step is certainly getting a local IP address, something for your local LAN. You can do this in several ways. Of course, DHCP is available. If I highlight this, it's going to zero out all of my settings. I reboot the unit, it'll come back and gather an IP address from the router. I can certainly get this address from the IT staff, which is definitely more preferred. Have them give me an IP address. They can give me a subnet as well as a gateway. Of course, if I am using DHCP and I pull an address, I certainly want to uncheck DHCP. I don't want to keep getting new addresses. So once you've drawn an address from DHCP, go ahead and uncheck that, and away you go. Of course, the gateway, you know, is how all of the devices inside the network know how to get out to the internet. This is unique for your network, but it's certainly going to be identical on all of your networking devices. So you can just connect to the local network on your PC or your laptop and find out what the gateway is. The three ports that we're primarily concerned with when we talk about port forwarding is the HTTP port, the TCP port, and the UDP port. Now the HTTP port is again primarily used for internet access or web access. Internet Explorer, Google Chrome, Safari, and Mozilla Firefox can all attach right from the web interface. You'll usually attach to port 80. If you do have multiple recorders, you can certainly give each unit its unique HTTP address. If I hit :81, I'll go to recorder number 2. If I hit :82, I'll go to recorder number 3, etc., etc. On the TCP side, this is again primarily used for our remote access on the phone apps, our ICRSS Pro, our ICView, and our IC720 all utilize this TCP port. It's also used by our smart ICRSS, so if you're using our free remote access software from a PC or a Mac, you're going to use the TCP address to connect in. The UDP is primarily used on corporate networks. We rarely use it for residential. It's a much more secure type of protocol. A lot of times your IT folks are going to require a UDP port to be forwarded as well. Now keep in mind when I'm talking about the ports, we're talking about forwarding, not opening. By forwarding a port, any traffic coming in from the outside on say port 80 is going to be forwarded directly to the local IP of the recorder. This is going to give them a login screen. They're going to be able to put in their credentials and they'll be able to see what their credentials will allow them to see. Another port that's often used is our Rtsp port. Our technical support guys use that a lot for firmware updates, or if they need to get into the config, a more advanced config of the unit, they'll use the Rtsp. We don't normally forward that port unless we're in a troubleshooting mode, then you may need to forward that port as well. Let's go ahead and talk about some of the advanced settings under our network. Of course, first and foremost, let's talk about NTP. The time protocol isn't that important on analog systems, it's just a way to keep your time synchronized. On IP systems, it's vital because what will happen is each of your cameras will work independently and they'll have their own time. So it's kind of weird to look at the web interface and see 8 different cameras with 8 completely different times on it. By using a time server, be it a local college or even the national time server in Washington, D.C., you're able to have each one of your cameras sync up to a time server, say once a day, and you know your clocks are going to be accurate by within a couple seconds. It certainly looks a lot better. Of course, Ddns is a free service that's offered by us. All the units are built to suit, so your Ddns is going to be pre-configured. So I have IC Ddns. If I'm using another Ddns service like Ddns or No IP, those settings are here as well. Because it's pre-registered, I don't need to put any other settings. I don't need to put in the server or the port or anything like that because it's already been set up for me. If I accept the default, it's just going to be the MAC address of the unit, but most folks certainly want to customize it. I can make it patsdvr@icddns.com. I put in an email address just basically so every year or so we'll go through that list. If we see nobody's logged in, you could certainly use we'll send an email to you through the email address. Hey, are you still using Pat's DVR Ddns? If you're not using it, we'll throw it back in the pile and someone else can use it. If you are still using it, you just acknowledge. We're not going to hammer you with spam, trust me. All of our recorders have the ability to use UPnP, and I'm kind of a big fan of UPnP. If you're doing port forwarding, Universal Plug and Play is pretty awesome if you've got a good router. It will actually communicate with the router, it'll forward all your ports for you, and of course I like it because they call it a PAT table. Let's look at email notification. We mentioned in one of our other webinars about how our recorders can all be set up for email notification based on motion events or alarm events or a video loss, things of that sort. This is where you actually set it up. I can use any SMTP mail server. Remember, it sends email. It doesn't have POP, so it can't receive email. This one in particular is Gmail, or would be Gmail in most folks. Port was certainly whatever SMTP port they use. My username, my password. I can even set a schedule. Then I have recipients, who I want these emails to go to. If I go through the head unit, I have one recipient. If I use the web interface, I actually have 3. So if you need to send them more than one recipient, go ahead and set it up at the head unit and then go back in and add your additional recipients. I can certainly do SMS as well. If I have the phone number at whatever the carrier's SMS address is, I can send text messages out of this as well as emails. The title, of course, I can change. It's customizable if I want it to be the name of the client, or I want to make it the name of that particular recorder. That way when I get the text message, I know exactly which device it is. If I'm doing attachments like snapshots, all I do is check the attachments and away it goes. All of our recorders are outfitted to do NAS or FTP. All I have to do is put in the FTP server, the port that I'm using, my credentials, my remote directory. So it'll actually, if I have multiple locations coming to the same FTP, I can create a separate subdirectory for each one of those recorders. How big I want the files to be, obviously if I'm doing snapshots, and then my schedule. So I can only send files at night, I can only send files during alarm states, different states, it's all set up in here. Now FTP and NAS are primarily used in server environments if I'm sending files out to a server somewhere, but they can also be used for cloud services. IC Realtime's in final negotiations with a worldwide cloud-based service to allow for cloud storage. That's going to be done through the FTP, through the NAS, and of course that'll all be configured before you get the unit on site. So those are our advanced settings. This is a little bit more about our networking settings. Again, gathering the addresses is pretty simple. The ports are pretty simple. Port forwarding is a very easy feature. It's something that we do here for free. If you'd like, you can certainly contact our help desk. In fact, they have a wonderful call-ahead service where you can call or shoot us an email in the morning and say, hey, call my tech on site at this time, and they will. So it's very, very convenient to have our engineers call back at a scheduled time. We do make appointments for that. They will log into your computer. They will set up the recorder for you. They can help you set up your router as well. Keep in mind they won't do that unless a dealer is on site. So we won't do that for end users, but only for our installers. But this is networking, the basics of it. There are a couple of very valuable tools I want you to be aware of for websites. CanYouSeeMe.org is a great website that we utilize a lot to verify your ports. So it'll give you your public IP address as well. Portforwarding.com is a great website that actually has how-tos on how to port forward different types of routers. So those two websites are a big help when you're out there on your own setting up. But again, keep us in mind as a great resource to help you with your router setups. So that was networking. I want to thank you very much for your time. Again, I'm Pat Carter, the training manager here at IC Realtime. Enjoy the rest of the video series and have a great day.